But what I didn't want to do is stand outside the NBL and a coach loses a game. Oh, Brian Goorjian is sitting on top of your throat waiting to dive in. I didn't want that. What's really important I want to be in an environment where you can win. You know, in the NBL, it's a tough league. It's the second best league in the world. It's the second best league in the world. Well, if it's the second best league in the world, and I think it's going that way, the way to analyze that is if you're not playing in the NBL and you're Australian, why the hell wouldn't you be playing in the NBL?
Welcome back to another episode of The Huddle. A very special guest joins me, the greatest of all time, recently announced as the Sydney Kings head coach, Brian Goorj. And Goorj, thank you for joining us. How are you feeling now? It's been a couple of weeks since it's been announced. How's it all going?
Boy, really excited, and coming down that tail end of the season, I knew after the Olympics, after the World Cup, when I was in the locker room, 10 months due to the COVID leading in, that you've only got 10 months before the Olympics. So it's like, I'm not going to be able to coach domestically. And then knowing this is the season's going on and watching the NBL and sitting for the first time, knowing that, the Olympics are my last, I want to continue coaching. So that was the time. I mean, you can't wait till after the Olympics, so the process is now. And as I was watching the NBL, that was my preference. I just think what's going on in the NBL is so exciting. The last time I was in it, I left for the EASL, which was something real special, but could see how great this was, and that was really my attraction. But as the season was coming down to the end, I'm going, I'm not in a situation where I want to take somebody's job. It's like there's no positions there. And then real quickly, that Sydney thing, it didn't end how they wanted to. It opened up, and it happened so quick. You wake up in the morning and go, man, I'm back with the Kings. And now it's recruiting, and you're going to the city again and start you're getting your hands into it, and I'm just really excited.
You mentioned that time of the 10 months after the World Cup, and wherever you said it, it was an article online, or you're speaking to someone on the radio and said that you'd be open to coming back to the NBL. Who you are, you've won 6 championships in the NBL. Did you envision that you'd start popping up at different teams around the league so quickly and so heavily? And as you said at the time, there was no positions to be filled, but there still were attaching your name to a lot of teams around the league thinking about next year.
I really was uncomfortable with it, to be truthful with you. And I've heard other coaches in that and said, that's just not, I didn't feel that was right. What I said was, and sometimes when you're interviewed, there's 8 paragraphs of conversation and one line's taken out. What my comment was just as I said to you, that I wanted to coach domestically when the Olympics finished. So I meant anywhere, China, Japan, and I was communicating with those people. What I didn't want to do is stand outside the NBL and a coach loses a game. Oh, Brian Goorjian is sitting on top of your throat waiting to dive in. I didn't want that. And so my name was popping up. A guy'd lose 2 or 3 games, and it's like, well, maybe Brian Goorjian. And I was uncomfortable with that. That's not what I was looking at. What I was looking for is what transpired. And you look at, I left Wollongong, and Wollongong was going through a bad patch. And I'm looking maybe when that finishes, they got a temporary coach in there. Similar situation in Adelaide. I thought two great organizations, well run, and were in the need of help. But Tatum did an outstanding job, and I love the Hawks, and I was happy for them and happy for his success. And then Scott Ninnis played for me, and we won a championship together, and I certainly wasn't sitting there hoping he wouldn't, but I was also thinking it might be a temporary situation and I step in. So those were the 2 that, as the season was coming down the back stretch, you're looking at and say, I might be a nice fit for them. But I started to explore and start thinking about the overseas thing when those 2 were doing so well. And then, like I said, the Kings came out of nowhere.
How do you deal with that? Because you would have seen a whole lot. I mean, this is not the Spectres in 1988. The social media, as you said, you take one comment and people run with it. And you said it made you feel uncomfortable. You were travelling a lot, obviously catching up with the Boomers players and whatnot. You said it was uncomfortable. What do you do in those situations?
Well, I stay away from social media. I have, I have so many funny stories on that because it comes to you no matter what. You know, you come back from the World Cup that was kind of uncomfortable, and my daughter will say, "Hey, don't worry about what they're saying." I wasn't worried until you hit me with that. But for me, it was watching. I am engaged in the NBL. You know, like I come back and I love the games. I know everybody involved in it. I thought it's great basketball, and when you're watching it, you know, you're coming up on that. Goorjian, Scott Roth will come in his interview and say, well, Scott Ninnis should hold this position. It's like it involves me on a lot of these things, and that's where it came from. And again, it's out of my control. And all you can do is I kind of have a theme to thy own self be true, and just try to do the right thing. And I feel like being out of it and this season I've done the right thing, and I've handled myself the best way that I can. That's all you can do.
And after all that, you end up in a full circle moment back at the Sydney Kings. When the phone first rings or you first hear the name the Sydney Kings popping up as your potential destination, how'd that make you feel?
Well, one, it's the Kings, and you sit down and you think, okay, when you're weighing all these things up, here or here, and you're looking at the next move, what's really important and really important. I want to be in an environment where you can win. How in the NBL, it's a tough league, and you're seeing that brand, and you see, I dealt with and understand what Chris Pongrass does. I haven't had that piece in my time. And with the salary cap and with recruiting, that is such an important piece. And in going to work now, I've never had that. And having, Luke Longley and Andrew Bogut, around this thing as far as the culture of the team and dealing with players, it helps so much on the recruiting and their coaches. Good analysis on style of play, how to put a team together. So I knew when this opportunity came, I got a great chance to win. I got people around it. I've coached Andrew Bogut, and I've had a long relationship with Luke since I've come back into the Boomer job. He was an assistant coach and has helped me immensely on the processes through getting that bronze medal and today moving forward. So we've been in contact prior. So it just happened that the season finished poorly for them. They didn't get what they wanted, and it was time. They felt it was time for change. So it all fell into place, and how I envisioned it, being into it now for 2 or 3 weeks on my feet running, it's everything I expected.
We know Chris Pongrass, one of the best in the league at everything you just described, and you also mentioned how hard it is to win in the NBL. Sydney Kings win 2 in a row, and they didn't have the success they wanted this year, but they had a whole new starting five that we often forget about because of the way they started the season. What are you trying to put together to get back to the top and win another championship? What kind of team were you trying to build here?
Well, I think, you always, and it's a great time, you're watching the 2 best teams in the competition in a formula for success. And I think, everyone, the great thing about the little island or whatever they're talking about now and all that, but you look at what Scott Roth has done, and he's done a tremendous job with coaching. Tremendous. I mean, his team plays second to none, and he's done a tremendous job with selection of people and culture and style of play. And then third, and I think what's really changed and people don't get, they've got one of the best rosters in the competition. But to attract that, you have to have those other 2 pieces. And so they've got 2, to me, marquee Australians. They've got 3 quality imports. In those imports, they have because of the other 2, they've got a great backcourt, both being American, and then a great Australian behind them, and those little pieces around it. So I take that formula, and it's kind of how I started in this thing, in the recruiting and building the culture and being attractive to not everybody, but to a certain group. I see Tassie in that way, and then you look at Melbourne, and to me, United, it's like the old Magic. I look at it and I go in there sometimes to their practice sessions, and their Australian content is elite. And I watch Dean, and Dean's very comfortable dealing with Australian talent, and they're good with him. And so in taking this job. I had 2 players signed, so I can paint my own canvas. And if you look at the Kings, and on the critical side of last year's team, I don't think that to the 2 championship teams, and certainly not the fault of the coach. The coach came in late and the team was put together. But when you look at it, the tenacity, the toughness, the defensive end of the floor, the 50-50 balls, it just wasn't what it was. And so, you know, getting that culture right, getting guys that want to be Kings, and that Australian content right now is big, those marquee players. And then the winning's in the picking, then getting that staff around it that you're comfortable with and start that build. But it is going to be a build. And as you said, you know, you've only got 10 teams. And all these players that we're producing, no matter who you grab, you only get 10. And there's others. So you look at all the teams, they're all got talent and they're all competitive. It's, I think the main, a big piece for us is wanting to be a King right now and building and starting that culture again.
And during even last season when they did have their struggles, they're still selling out Kudos Bank Arena. The fans have come a long way to supporting this team, and it's fantastic to see. When you see, I guess, the unhappiness of losing, does that make you more excited to understand how passionate these Sydney Kings fans are?
Well, you know, I come from the States, LA, New York, you know, and I know what that is, and you get that behind you. It's a powerful piece, but you embrace that. I mean, and when you say that, I think part of it's the basketball, but Larry Kesselman and what he's done with the NBL and the ownership and all the stuff around it, it's always been a good product. But now it's moved in when I was in Sydney and we won 2 championships in a row, we're in the middle of the season and we're getting 3,000, 4,000 people to a game, and when we're trying to three-peat. And you look at it now, and like you said, they had a struggle season and the place is packed. I think that's about the brand of the NBL. And when I went to watch a Sydney Kings game for the first time, I've never been there as a spectator. And I went to the members area, and then you're sitting at the 50-yard line above and looking at the scores. They all get handed out their rings. There's 14,000 people there. And I just come from Patty Mills, Joe Ingles, seeing all those guys in the NBA environment. I walked around the outside of the place, everything that's going on out there, the buzz around it. I go, this is no different than the NBA. And then when you see the guys in their positions, 6'10", 6'11", 6'9", athletic, dunks, blocks, the buzz, it's like, man, and then I've been to a couple of the United games here, and it's the same thing. You're sitting at the very roof of the place and you're shoulder to shoulder. It's great about the Kings, but it's also really exciting about the league that we're in and what's going on in the NBL.
You mentioned those Boomers guys, and we'll touch on the Boomers a bit at the end, but you have done a lot of travel and over in the Philippines and Japan, because you also mentioned about the team and marquees, and Xavier Cooks, a big name attached to the Sydney Kings, an important piece to really any puzzle when you're trying to build a team. How important was it to go after a player of his caliber and his versatility?
Well, I think when you look at the Kings, and when you look at the Kings, a big piece that's missing, a lot of times over the years, I've lost a player, and you go, well, I'm 15 rebounds, 18 points. How are we going to replace this? And then you go and you get this guy and you bring him in and you go, man, there was so much more. You know, you come in and you don't have that little bit of humor at practice or that voice in the locker room. And I think what you see with Xavier is when he left is there was so much more missing for the organization and for his teammates. So when I got the job, my number one priority is, you know, I'm going to do everything I can. I owe it to the organization, I owe it to myself to bring him back. And then I look at it from a league standpoint, and you know, you watch all the games and you hear Homicide, you hear you guys on the side, you know, it's the second best league in the world. It's the second best league in the world. Well, if it's the second best league in the world, and I think it's going that way, the way to analyze that is if you're not playing in the NBL and you're Australian, why the hell wouldn't you be playing in the NBL? And so bringing guys like him back, bringing guys like Nick Kay back is a real statement that yes, we are here, because we are producing some great players and they're wanted in those places. But this is, I've been over there, I've been in those regions. We are now moved to a place, And I'm living proof, this is where you want to be. It is legitimate. So if we get this done and we're right there, I think it's great for the Kings and the Kings brand, and I also think it's great for the NBL.
The style of coaching that you have and the style of play that you see in your teams, has it changed a lot over the time? And is it more about what you've learned in the different places you've been coaching at? Or compared to the last time you were in the NBL with the Illawarra Hawks, do you feel like you've learned a whole lot and changed anything in the last couple of years?
Well, it's the parallel here is very much like the Olympics, and the people say, oh, we don't move the ball side to side. We don't play as pretty as the Europeans. And we're not trying to play that way. And we're trying to beat them. So what I'm saying about the NBL now, when you say, have you changed? Yeah, I've changed because the NBL is different than what I played in. When I was, there was 2 guys sitting in the low block. You have John Goorj and you have Tony Ronaldson. You have 3 guys around it and you're moving the ball side to side. And it's a butt grind and smash mouth basketball against Gaze and Copeland's over the top act, So my basketball was half court and it was a butt grind, where now the game has changed. It's much more, I think Australian basketball, and I think the NBL is much more north-south than the Europeans playing east-west, side to side. So you're trying to get giddy. You're trying to get these guys going downhill, and you're not, the action happens now. As soon as you cross half court, what are you getting in the first 3 or 4 seconds of the clock? And then a concept on the second side, what are you getting on that second side? And then the third thing, what you see in Europe, which is now the scout. That's what Melbourne United are going through their film and saying, we're going to guard it this way, we're going to guard it that way. So if you're a coach and you're the national coach of Australia, where I'm coaching the Kings, and there's 100 possessions, I want 15 possessions in the scout. I want the other 85 possessions in those first 2 boxes. And so it's been a complete circle for me, because I played in the 3rd box most of my career in the NBL.
When we look at you and the career you've had, the outstanding accomplishments, a lot of people would think that you're just stepping in, doing what you do. You go in, you win, that just is what happens. I feel like for you, you're always chasing something more. You continue trying to learn, trying to grow. What keeps you doing that all this time along in your career?
Well, there's so many rewards you get. I feel like, when I went overseas, I had a buzz after leaving here. I needed, the international aspect. Sorry to jump, but being in the NBL and then getting that opportunity, which I never expected, to coach the Boomers, it energized me. It's like, this is all new, and I got a whole world I got to learn about. Then I went overseas, and every day is a new experience. How do you get to this spot? What's the training facility? Right, this is new. I haven't played this basketball. Then you come back to the NBL, and there's the change there. And what you feel like now as you get older and you've been in it, one, if you're not energized, if you're not excited, if you're not want to get better, go over here. It's time to move away. And I know I've still got that to me, and part of it is because of that constant change and that experience. And the other common denominator that I really realize is I like being around the young. It's just, you're constantly learning. They're constantly changing. When I started this, I was their brother, and then I was their dad, and now I'm their grandpa. So you know what I mean? It's like, I love the challenge of that.
When you initially left to go to China, do you remember that decision, how hard it was to do?
I remember it so well. I went to the Kings, we won 3, and firepower came in, change of ownership, and the team just finished. Then I went to the Dragons, we won the championship, and the Boomers finished. And right after the Boomers finished, and then the Dragons, we won the championship, and that was it at the Dragons. I said, I can't do this anymore. The NBL was in a state where you were constantly worried, are my guys okay? Mm-hmm. Are we going to be here? Are the sponsors happy? Is this going to go on next year? I had that on me the whole time. And when I went to Asia and I did a camp there for a while. I saw what was going on, and it's like when I was in Dongguan, it's like you're coaching Collingwood, but there's a billion people there. I'm not worried about the uniforms. I'm not worried about promoting the game. Just play the game, win your game, and you're set. So when you're in that concern was more than I thought by it not being there anymore. But when you're coaching overseas, there's all these other issues, but that one was a huge one. When I came back to the league, and when you're in there, that no longer exists. And again, I keep stroking Larry Kessel, but it's true that the whole thing changed. And now, I mean, I came back, we were in COVID. And I said to all our team, oh, we're in this room, we're in that room, I said, hey man, when I was in this thing, if this would have happened, over, done. This would no longer exist. The fact that it continued and ticked, and we lived pretty damn well, and we went right through COVID, and you see what's going on now. It's the point of no return. This thing's going, and again, being overseas and in those environments too, they're all talking about Australia. What's going on in the NBL? God, it's a great league. All the imports talk about it. Such a great place to live. Everybody speaks English, and look at the growth in this thing and what they're producing.
I can attest that as someone who nearly signed with the Crocs and then they fell apart in 2015 when you're looking over your shoulder. But you mentioned the young Australian prospects and how exciting the time is to be a part of Australian basketball. We've got college kids coming out who all of a sudden the NBL is a legitimate pathway to the NBA, and you said how exciting that is for you. Alex Tui, someone who we know is going to have a big impact in the NBA. What is it about Australian basketball now, not just the NBL, that is so well placed around the world?
Well, I mean, I knew when I came to Victoria, this is the place, and it's the place because of Lindsay Gaze. Lindsay Gaze got stadiums built, and as you go around, there's nothing like this place as far as stadiums and places to play. And now I said when we got that medal at the Olympics, I'm there for this little. It's not me. It's this pyramid, and we're the top of it. But this pyramid that's being the center of excellence. You go around. I have grandkids. 7, 4, they're at 5-court stadiums, and the teaching and the coaching these kids are getting. Mike Dunlap came out and just did some clinics around Victoria, New South Wales, and had a chance to meet with the coaches in New South Wales, Victoria, and the knowledge that they have, the coaching of the coaching, what Peter Lonigan's doing. Again, by being in Basketball Australia, I've been able to see this firsthand right through the last 8 years, and where that's going. Again, that's respected worldwide. If you're a kid and you've got talent, I'm in the Philippines now. I want to get my son? I want to get China. I want to get my son overseas. I want to get him to Australia, where they're going to get good coaching, play good basketball. It wasn't like that 15 years ago. So the bases, the foundation are there with the coaches, with the opportunity, and with the amount of kids playing.
I can sit here and talk basketball philosophy with you till we're red in the face, because I love to hear the way you talk about it. But I want to talk about culture, because culture is something that you've been really strong about with the Boomers, but also on a domestic level. What different challenges do you hold with getting a culture? We saw what happened with Sydney, and when they weren't as where they wanted to be this season, compared to the Boomers, where you're with these guys for a camp. I know they do a lot of stuff in communication in between World Championships and the Olympics, but when you're heading towards the Sydney Kings building this roster, do you take a different approach in maybe rebuilding a culture to a winning level?
How I'm approaching the Kings is, I think the start's really important. That you set the bar high, and that first punch is a good one, and it puts everybody on their heels. And then, what is culture? Culture really, it's behaviors, and putting those behaviors in place, and then where the Boomers went, which was, again, a lot to do with Australian rules football, and I'd like to think I was a part of it with Ray McLean coming into the Boomers, which I got from the football, the empowerment of the players setting those behaviors, and developing that leadership through Ray McLean, and evaluating the behaviors. And what happened out of that was Patty Mills, Joe Ingles are the two that I comment to, because they were with me in the beginning. And to go away for 12 years and come back and see where Patty Mills and Joe Ingles had taken this was incredible. And I think, again, when I'm starting with the behaviors and making those behaviors clear and strong, and then evaluating and getting players in and making them start to lead those behaviors, and now you build it. And eventually, I came into it, and now you got Baines, you got Bogut, you got, Bogut was a big part of the start of it. He was the first one, then Joe and Patty. And then when I came in, there was 5, and that thing was so strong. When I came into Huntington Beach, and I got handed the job like just before, and then the part of the reason I got the job was that Brett had stepped down, and they were going into Olympics, and really this was it. They put a lot of work into it, and I had a familiarity with them, so I had no thought of going back to the Boomers. And then now you're the Boomers coach. I talked to Patty and Joe. I walked in, and I wasn't a part. It was the Huntington Beach. We call it a drop-in center. Every player came in, and I'm sitting on the bench, and I'm watching Tybal. I'm watching Reith Duop, Josh Green, Josh Giddey come in, and Patty and Joe are right there. And those guys, now this is what, it was the music, it was the food, it was, gold medal vibes. Everything we do is quality. And a lot of pressure on them, and they were talking about it in an early stage. When we go, you guys got to take it to another level. When I came to the Boomers, it was after Sydney. They didn't qualify for the Worlds, and we started, and there was no handover. And I'm looking at that and going, if those guys hadn't been touched by those guys, how long is that? That's 8 years. So the culture, and Australia, I think, is when you talk about, and you have guys coming in from overseas, they all talk about it, and a lot of the guys playing in the NBA are playing in the NBA because they're that role on their NBA team. That's how Joe got into the NBA. He was a good culture guy. Patty Mills, and you look at, Giddey, you look at Delhi, all those guys are that piece. That's an Australian trait.
Do you take some of that, or as much as you can, to translate it to a local comp and domestically? Because you've been to the Boomers twice now, 2 different stints, and as you mentioned, you've seen a lot of things. But the Boomers camp, the Boomers 12 that go away, that's a different level compared to locally with Sydney Kings, where you've got the youngsters like Alex Tui who destined and want to become a Boomer one day, but they're not quite at the level of those professionals yet. Do you modify it somewhat, or do you kind of say, hey, this is what I know is a recipe for success, we're going to follow this as best we can?
The second aspect, and I'll be truthful, when I walked into Wollongong, I said, I've got a short period of time, and to me, there wasn't a leader there. This is my show. It's got to come off me, and I've got to start. And leadership is a skill. It's no different than shooting the ball, and that's why it's dribbling the ball. There's an education to it. And not everybody is a leader, So that first year, I came in, I ran it, I set the behaviors. It all came off me. But over the second year, now you get Frawling involved in that. You get, we had 2 or 3 that we moved, and it's starting to grow. And now I look at the Hawks play now, and you can see it. That teamship, everyone talk, but that's been a grind over a 3-year period. So I don't know where it's going to start with the Kings, but I know I get a chance now to pick guys that I think have it in them, and then how it starts and how you grow it, I'll see as I get part of it's field. But I don't think in Australian sport, and I've been around United. You watch Tassie; those 2 teams, they're in the grand final for a reason. And if that element isn't there, I don't think you're going to be the best you can be. And it's a big, big part of Australian sport.
When it comes to that and your recruitment of a team you're trying to put together, and a lot of coaches, nearly all coaches will say that they recruit the person first. When you've already got a couple of those big personalities locked away, are you looking for, again, just great people and players, of course, or are you looking for someone who you know is going to mesh well with that person and build something special going forward?
Well, it's so difficult what you say, but I find in this culture and around us basketball, I've dealt with very few bad dudes, guys that come and you go, man, I don't like. Some of them need a little more than others. Some of them you treat a little bit differently. But then you got those guys that are, Delhi's special. That's, I mean, we're in entertainment. Everything's visual. That guy's special as far as something like this. I've been around. Chris Goulding is special. And I know I want to get 3 or 4 of those guys that are special. And then those pieces around it, if there is a little bit of a problem or something, I feel like I can take a risk on a couple because I've got 5 or 6 guys that are going to take this boat in the right direction, and it's going to be good for these guys, and their ceiling's high. So I don't go for Mr. Perfect all the time. And then some of the traits that some people don't like, you may like. Somebody, I had Shane Hill for a little while that'd go right there with you, and I enjoyed that. I mean, he brought something to the table that the team needed. So there's that base that you have, and then that spice and stuff that goes around it. A lot of it, from me, is feel and what suits my personality.
Hearing you talk about all of this and the things you've been watching in the last 10 months, I can't imagine that when you're not coaching, I mean, obviously preparing for the Olympics at the time, and you're watching an NBL game, I can't imagine you're sitting there quietly. Are you invested? Are you seeing things on the floor that you're talking about? Are you completely emotionally invested, or you just take it all back and take your coach's hat off with it when you're not domestic coach at the time?
I'm horrible. the word, I'm horrible. What was that, or why did he say that? No, that's a moving screen. Relax. Once that thing, because I feel so emotionally involved, and usually there's guys in the game that I really care for, or that or I really want something good to happen for. But when I'm much more relaxed. It's interesting if I'm watching an NBA game or so. I can sit back and float. But when I'm watching NBL games, you realize you've put so much into this, and so much of you is invested in this, and you want it to be great, and you want it to be, and you just, the worst one ever was when I had COVID, and Jacob was coaching, and we were playing Melbourne, and I said to my wife, I said, Amanda, just relax. I'm not going to be that guy. I'll just sit in the middle of the first quarter. She's got her bag. She's gone down the stairs. I'll see you after the game's over. She's gone, like, do up. She's get on the glass. And it's in me.
I do want to chat about the Boomers a little bit, but on your coaching career as a whole, after everything you've been through, what you know now, what did you wish you knew almost 30 odd years ago back at the Spectres when it was all beginning?
Probably patience, just more patience, and coaching slower. So if I said, if you go back, I wanted everything way too much, way too fast, you can see I'm way too excited to calm down, enjoy it, slow it down, make it simpler, just more controlled. If I had that to do, but for when you start ticking the boxes, I was fortunate, to have good mentors. That's a really important one. I was fortunate to be around Australian rules football and grow and learn from them. So I look back and I give advice to coaches, and I was very fortunate that I got all that for the most part. So within me, it was probably my personality. If I could do better, it's slow the teaching down, be more controlled, clearer. And I learned a lot of that, and I saw it when I went to Asia. When I went to Asia, I worked through an interpreter. And when you work through an interpreter, the process has to be slower, and you use your voice a lot less. And you teach differently, because going from here to there, I look at them and go, no, I'll let it go a little longer. And I thought, man, I should have done this a long time ago.
Before we get on to the Boomers, I do need to ask, because we can't wait to see you on the sideline in NBL 25. Last time you were here with the Hawks, you had some iconic footwear on the sideline going up and down. Are you going to roll out some feet heat again in NBL 25?
I've got a whole new display.
Whole new display.
I only had the one knee replacement. Now I wasn't on balance. Now I've had the second one. I have a full range. I was in the Hokas only. Now I got a wider. So
keep an eye out.
I got a little something for you.
Looking forward to that. We have mentioned the Boomers, and obviously the first thing we're going to see you on the sidelines of is the Olympics. The draw just recently happened. When you're sitting back watching the draw, knowing that every game is to win a gold medal, you're going to have to go through the best anyway. What were your initial thoughts when it all came out?
Well, it was interesting, like I said, reading Stephen Smith's comments today. I thought they were great because this is and a lot of times we're sheltered. I think a great I feel for the NBA, but for the NBL and the NBA, but the international game has moved to another level. And his point today was this is going to be Olympics as far as basketball goes like no other, because you have all these countries, but you look at the NBA, the top competition in the world, it's international now. There are players from all over the world, and a lot of them. And now these guys are all going to come back. They all want to play in this Olympics. And America's going to load up. And then the last paragraph was the toughest pool. And it's a pool of no easy game, is the pool we're in. Because you've got Canada, which might have more talent than Team USA, and they got the bronze. And then we have the qualifier from Spain and the qualifier from Greece. The qualifier from Spain could be and probably will be Spain. In the qualifier from Greece, you have the Greek Freak and you have Greece. If it's Greece and Spain, there's 4 teams in there that are capable of winning gold.
We only ever hear of Boomers camps from the outside in, and a lot of people would think you've got a camp so close to a major tournament that it's going through the motions. You're just trying to pick and put together a team. We know you've been travelling to visit everybody, but from all reports, these Boomers camps can get incredibly competitive. When you're standing on the sideline and watching the generations go at each other and the youngsters who are so hungry to come through, and then on the other side for years, Delhi, who we know only plays a certain way, what's it like to sit back and try and coach all that during those competitive moments?
It's challenging. It's totally, like I said, part of the excitement about it's a totally different game, and it's a totally different thing than domestic basketball. And for coaches, for the players, one of the primary things is your ability to learn, and you got to pick up things quick. So it's amazing to me how much they get done in a 7th or 8th day window. It's like, okay, you've got 8 days, and now you're playing the level that we're talking about. So the learning aspect is mind-boggling, how quick they learn and how much they know, and the environments they come from, how well they've been coached. And then the talent, the gene pool, the size. When you stand next to Joe Ingles, you go, God, that's a big dude. You stand, like, I'm just using him as an example because you think 6'5", 6'6", he's 6'9", and he's broad and he's long. And then you go Patty Mills and no, he's not quick, he's lightning, and you go through each guy like that, and you notice it right. I've never had talent like that on the floor going at each other, and so you put in a concept and you go, wow, that's a lot different because of the talent and their knowledge than I've ever been around before. And now we're at a level that it's not 4 or 5 of them, it's 16 of them. And now making the team, I mean, for a Patty, for a Joe, it's a battle. So now, as you said, they're not stupid. They walk in that door, you've got a short window. So when you say, okay, let's go, it's 3 possession, we're in this here and then we're in this back, they're, call the fouls. They want to know what the score is. And loser is the loser. It is really, really competitive. So you walk out of that gym and I scratch myself, well, I'm around the best. I'm around the elite. And when you get in the competition and you're standing on that sideline, it's, again, it's at a level, it's NBA level or better.
You said a bit earlier how this was your last Olympics in charge of the Boomers. Are you good at separating the emotion side of that for you with everything you've accomplished going into it, or are you using the other side of embracing it as part of this journey?
Embracing it. I mean, as you get, I try to enjoy every single day and take nothing for granted. So disappointment, mistakes, I take as great learning. Like I learned something, the team learned something, we're going to get better for it. Every meal, every conversation, I know it's coming to an end. And I'm trying to, and I do, enjoy every minute of it and don't take any of it for granted.
And lastly, on the Boomers, you mentioned a couple of players. You mentioned how you like to see the young kids come through and grow and go on to achieve big things. Can't not ask you about Do Not Breathe, because you coached him on a domestic level, and now we're seeing in the NBA, got his opportunity after standing out. As a coach who's had a part of his journey, how does that make you feel?
It's why you're in it. And I'm sure any coach, why do you do this? What's the winning and the losing? It's even keel. The most championships, if it's just the championships, I've had 6 of them, and everyone goes, "Wow, it's fantastic." Well, I've been coaching for 40 years, 37 years. If it's just championship, you're having a horrible time. You know, it's the relationships that you meet. Sorry, the relationships you build, the people you meet along the way, and the closest ones you have are those ones you're on the floor with. And Do Not Breathe. Again, I've been in it a long time, but never anything like his journey. How, you know, it started for him, where he was when he became a Boomer, just my part, where he was at in his career, who he is as a person. That's a whole, there's no one more popular in our group, take the basketball away, than him. And everyone to a man is just over the moon when he made it, and now what he's doing in it. And seeing him and going over there, and you know, he was right on is the contract going to come? Am I going to get it? When I got that news, that it just, you know, it just warms the soul. And again, it's why we're in this game. But it couldn't have happened to a better person, and the journey that he's done to get there is so unique. You know, at a Boomers camp in Huntington Beach, bring him here. We don't know who he is. I've never seen him play. We're thin in the big spot. Get a phone call from Maddie and Cape saying, hey, he's pretty good. You bring him in there. He comes to Wollongong, plays 1 season, goes to China. I've been in China for a year. Didn't dominate, was good in China. 2-way contract, and now he's an NBA player, and a good one. So the Boomers, Australian basketball, the NBL, all of us were a part of that journey. Special person. Again, it couldn't be happier.
Goorj, we appreciate your time. Good luck for the Olympics. Good luck in NBL 25. I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll chat, because we could talk basketball for hours. But good luck with everything. Thank you.
Thank you.